Did you know Variety, the children's charity, is the entertainment charity started by a group of show business people who found an abandoned baby in a theatre way back in 1928. These kind-hearted performers raised so much money to help the lost child that they began helping other children, and Variety, the children's charity, was born. Read the full story and support the entertainers charity that supports kids in need today. Visit variety.org.au. You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Maury Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
Marty Wilson is an award-winning comedian. He's also an author, and in this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast, we talk about his new book on comedy, More Funny, More Money. Originally an online course, also called More Funny, More Money, the book was an obvious evolution. And in this interview, Marty highlights that humour is not only useful on a stand-up comedy stage, but is also scientifically linked to better leadership, increased attractiveness, and reducing stress. Marty also talks about his International Business Humour Summit and takes up the Pay It Forward joke challenge with the word pedestal clock. And if you're enjoying these podcasts and would like to be part of a comedy community, be sure to check out our School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast community group on Facebook. You'll meet like-minded comedy lovers, get free advice, and be reminded of upcoming comedy courses. And now, here's my interview with Marty Wilson. Good morning, Marty. How are you?
Good morning, Murray. Thanks for having me, mate. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, very good. You know, I listened to our last interview, which was episode 29, and it was a miserable, rainy day in Bondi where you were. How's the weather today?
Well, mate, I have, since we spoke last time, I've moved to Noosa. I've moved to the Sunshine Coast. Oh. So it is an absolutely glorious, clear-skied, expected top of like 23 today in the middle of autumn.
Oh, dear.
Pretty nice up here, I have to say, mate.
Oh, dear. Well, yeah, Melbourne's got the weather that you had last time.
And that's the end of this interview. Thanks for having me, Marty Wilson.
Rubbing it in. All right, so you're now a Queenslander. Excellent.
You know, my wife said the other day, and I've been quoting it, you know, Queensland is great. It's just the durs that are not fun.
Yeah, the ers, yes.
Queensland's great. Just Queensland durs.
Yeah.
No, to be honest, I think it's, and I've been trying to desperately plead with my wife that it's not been the fact they're Queenslanders, they're sort of more small country town people up here. Like country town people are just so ridiculously pleasant. You know, I'm sure if you went to the central west of Orange in New South Wales or, you know, to the centre of Victoria, it'd be exactly the same. But just people are so chilled out compared to, you know, the hustle and bustle of Bondi where I was.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Understand.
Absolutely loving it.
Understand that completely. Well, talking about hustle and bustle, you have a busy day this morning, so I'm not going to do too much small talk. We'll get stuck straight into it. Now, this is the second interview. People that listen to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast would recognise Marty Wilson. Oh, haven't we already heard from him? Yes, we have. Episode 29, I interviewed Marty and I found out how he got started in comedy, his trip to the UK, meeting your wife, having a family over there, and all the personal side. But at the end of that, a very small piece of that interview, we actually got onto the business side of comedy, and well, we kind of ran out of time, but at the same time I also knew that there was a book coming out. So today in this interview I'd like to talk about two things. Firstly, More Funny, More Money, the book, and also your International Business Humour Summit, which you've been interviewing some of the top names in keynotes around the world.
Yep.
Well, let's get stuck into it. So, More Funny, More Money. You've written this great book. It covers why we need more funny, and also there's a lot of advice, those two parts. So part one, stand up, stand out, and part two, how to create humour for your content, pitches, speeches, and presentations. Quickly, how long is this book taking you to write?
It's I have to answer it in a roundabout way. The book came about from once I started doing the speaking circuit about 8-9 years ago. Lots of other speakers and presenters, and even corporate people like C-suite CEO people and that sort of thing who had a speech coming up, kept asking me to help funny up their stuff.
Yep.
kept asking me to help make their speech funnier or their presentation funnier. And, it's one of those business principles. If people keep asking you to do something and keep offering you money to do it, then chances are there might be a market in it.
Yeah.
And so I started doing this private one-on-one coaching and created an online course called More Funny, More Money.
Yep.
That blatant obnoxious plug, if you go to morefunnymmoremoney.com, there's all the details about it there.
Perfect.
But more importantly, so the book came from the fact that I'd already created this course, and in this course there's over 100 small 2 to 5 minute videos of how to create humour and use it and weave it into your presenting. And so when I bumped into a lady who used to be a publisher and is now an agent, a big sister of a friend I knew from college, and she said, just over a coffee, she said, "You must have a book in you. What book have you got in you?" And I said, "Well, I've got this course called More Funny, More Money," and she just, spat a coffee out. And because there's a company a publisher called Affirm in Melbourne that had, she knew she'd just sold them Hung Lee's biography, The Crappiest Refugee. I don't know if you've seen that in the bookshelf.
Yep. Yes, I have, yeah.
And they were looking for, they've done a few comedy books and they were looking for a business book. And so she thought this would be the perfect crossover for them. So that's the long answer. So it took me about 4 or 5 months to craft it up into book form. But I've been reading up about why humour is so vital for business for, 6, 7, 8 years. It's sort of something I've always been really passionate about, how powerful and underestimated humour is for things like engagement. If you are trying to, in a business context, get people to listen to you and listen to you for long enough for them to hear the messages the persuasion you're trying to get them, if you weave in a bit of humour in that, it gets people's attention. It increases long-term retention of your message by, when you say something, when you make somebody laugh, lots of different parts of their brain fire up.
Yep.
And so that creates memories that stay there for longer. And so, for example, if I were to ask you, how many conversations can you remember with friends under 10, word for word? The answer would probably be none.
Yep.
But if I said to you, I'll give you half an hour, think of how many jokes you learned when you were under 10.
Yep, yep.
And you'd probably be able to come back with 5 or 10.
Yep, yep.
And so humour, because of the way it works in our brain, increases long-term retention of the message. In the book, there's also influencing people. Like being funny builds credibility, because if you can, particularly in times of stress, if you can be funny through times of stress in the workplace,
resilience.
People look at you and just say, "Wow, that person must be on top of things. That person must feel in control." So they have. That's why you go on eHarmony or RSVP or those sort of things. That's why the one thing that everybody asks for their prospective life partner is GSOH, good sense of humour.
Yeah, right.
Because of evolution, we see people who have a good sense of humour, the ability to laugh at themselves, the ability to laugh more often. They must have a fair bit of inner peace going on.
Yep.
They must be psychologically healthy to be laughing all the time. And so if you can demonstrate that in the workplace, it's incredibly persuasive and incredibly charismatic.
Yeah, right.
And I've completely forgotten what your question was.
Yeah, no, I think I asked you how you got started, but that's perfect. Well, so get laid and get paid. Those are two.
Oh, there you
like
go.
that segue? Because one of the chapters in the book talks about how it's linked directly to more earnings. More funny, more earnings, actually, is the chapter 5. And it's not just your opinion, which I like. You're actually quoting some reputable sources as well. The Harvard Business Review, Laughing All the Way to the Bank by Fabio Sala, who linked, I think it was 2 times more likely, or you're going to, or in fact, I'll quote him directly, reports that senior executives who were rated as outstanding in their corporation used humour in their communication twice as often as those that rated as average.
Yeah, and that was like a very scientifically run experiment where they got a whole group of these executives, and the person interviewing them didn't know how they were rated before going into the interview, and just talked to them, interviewed them about the business, about how their work goes, and just wrote down how often they were funny in the space of a 2 hour interview. And then that correlated with they were like those who were rated as outstanding used humour twice as often as those who were rated as being quite poor. In another study I quote in the book, the massive international research company Ipsos interviewed over 700 CEOs in the States and asked them, what criteria do you hire for? And 98% of them put in the top 3 sense of humour.
Wow.
Because we just like to work with people that are fun to work with.
Yeah.
You know, like we spend so much time with these people at work. You know, and it's like, you know, good corporations hire on attitude and teach people skills. They don't hire somebody on their skills.
No.
So being able to demonstrate humour in your job interview, for example, is an incredibly powerful thing. You know, even just you know, small things like it, because and we can get on to sort of how to do it after this. But the thing I say is, don't try and crack jokes. Don't try and be a stand-up comic in the workplace. You know, don't be, you know, everyone listening to this has worked at somewhere that has a guy who comes in after harvesting stand-up comedy material from the internet and YouTube that night and comes in and tries to walk around the office and regurgitate this stuff and pretend he's funny. And I just to clarify, I'm not using the word guy as sort of a lazy pronoun for everybody. It's always a guy.
Right.
For example, in a job interview, just acknowledging little bits of smile humour, like, wow, this is stressful, isn't it? With a big smile on your face. You know, like just acknowledging the truth of what's going on and the underlying emotional intensity of the situation shows enormous peace of mind when you're in that situation being interviewed.
Yeah, right. I wonder because a lot of humour is about seeing a twist, a zig when everyone else is zagging. And I wonder in many ways, is that linked also to problem solving? So resilience is about overcoming a stress, and sometimes stress is caused by not being able to see a way out of a problem. But by having a creative mind, by having that humorous mind and a normal twist technique, are you able to, is there a direct link between problem solving and being or understanding the building blocks of comedy?
There is, mate. There is, and for a couple of different reasons. Partly, just exercising that part of your brain that makes lots of new connections and looks for novel ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
Exercising that part of your brain is a fantastic way to continually go through life, finding novel ways to solve problems. And that means that as you train your brain to do that over the weeks, months and years, your brain starts to realise that it doesn't matter what life is throwing at me. There's always seven different other ways to look at it than the way I'm looking at it now, which is making me really angry and stressed. And for example, they got some stand-up comics in and had them compete in idea generation with these people in a design firm that were used to coming up with new ideas around the idea of design. And there was actually improv. Actually, it wasn't stand-up, so it was improv guys and girls, and they got them in, and independently, like the judges didn't know who designed which. The improv people's ideas were seen as being of a higher quality than those people who were in the design all the time. And so, because, you know, we get stuck in our ways, and particularly it's important that you bring this up with respect to resilience, because when you are stressed about something, your brain naturally goes to what worked last time to ease this stress on me? What worked last time to get me out of this feeling that I don't like? And, you know, sadly for many of us, that's eating, drinking, smoking, gambling, shagging, doing things that give us a little hit. That's why, you know, lifestyle diseases are so bad, because you know, advertising teaches us you can eat, drink, smoke, shop, you know, shag your bad feelings away. But more importantly, sort of underlying that, if you can train your brain to always see that there's 5 or 6 novel ways to look at this problem, it won't revert back to, what worked last time to get me out of this situation? Because, quite often, the stuff our evolution stuff bubbles up, and what worked last time to get me out of this was to punch someone in the head or metaphorically, lash out at someone or something like that, instead of keeping your calm and giving your brain a bit of space and a bit of freedom to solve something in a more creative way. And the great thing about comedy is that if you just deliberately make yourself expose yourself to jokes and laughter and humour, that floods your brains with all the neurochemicals it needs to relax and be open to looking at more than one way of solving a problem.
Right.
So doing it when you're not stressed helps you not get stressed as much.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the middle of being stressed, it actually helps you, it helps relieve that stress, get rid of some cortisol, and floods your brain with all those creative neurochemicals that help you solve the problem you're in the middle of anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, people listening to this podcast are typically, the School of Hard Knocks podcast attracts people who are getting into comedy, want to learn from greats. So not necessarily the type of people who should be listening to it, which are the people who have that stressful office job, perhaps, because, but hopefully some of the people listening to this do have stressful office jobs as well, and maybe they know people in stressful office jobs as well, so they can listen to the advantage of that, and of course buy that book, More Funny, More Money.
But there's also the the thing, stand up is a really stressful job sometimes.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it has real peak moments of adrenaline, shall we say?
Yep.
And when something goes wrong, but if you're listening to this and you have to accept the fact when you walk on stage, 1 time in 10, something is going to go potentially catastrophically wrong. Yeah. But the way to absolutely exude confidence at the crowd is to laugh at it and play with it rather than, get stressed and throw the microphone down and, this club is crap or your audience is crap or something like that. And if you deliberately keep indulging your brain, diving into comedy with your brain in between gigs, and if you deliberately try to create new material all the time, that seems to train our brain to look at every problem as a fun exercise in creativity rather than a stressful thing you need to lash out at.
Yeah, sure. And I guess when you are performing and bombing on stage, you are...
And we've all done it.
Yeah, for sure. You're building up that tolerance, aren't you? And that tolerance is not just on stage, but that tolerance is in life, and that helps, obviously, with resilience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the question is, can you teach someone to be funny? Because, in fact, I'm reading your book right now, and chapter 7 says, why I know you can be funny.
Because...
So tell us about that particular chapter.
Because, see, being funny is like any other skill. It's like, I know I can teach you to be a pianist. I know I can teach you to be a tennis player. Well, no, actually not I, but I know you can learn to play tennis. I know you can learn to play piano. I know you can learn to do Sudoku. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't mean that I say everyone can be funnier. Yep. Not necessarily stand-up comedy funny. But if you're prepared to stick at it, you absolutely can. Like I did the Edinburgh Festival with a guy called Mickey Flanagan back in early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And then he was, he'd already been doing it for about 10 years, and he was really good. But there's something happened at the festival where he sort of planted his flag in the sand mentally, I think, and he just went, no, I am going to absolutely go for this. And, literally 10 years later, when I left the UK in 2008, like he was just, he was headlining everywhere and everything, and he was just getting really, really, really good.
Wow.
And then I just heard from a friend the guy promoter who took us up to Edinburgh on this showcase show that I did with him. And I'd heard that about 3 years ago he'd done a tour of the UK, a multi-million-dollar tour of theatres in the UK. And he's just done the O2 Arena, the dome they used to call it for the Millennium Dome. They now call it the O2 Arena. And he got the keys to the arena because he sold it out 20 nights in a row.
Wow. Okay.
And so if you want to get to that stage, like if you want to be a concert pianist or if you want to be, not everybody can be Roger Federer. But the great thing about being funny is most of it isn't natural skill. Most of it, like there are some people who just get up there and they're naturally funny and they will do better early on.
Yep.
But it's the people who just relentlessly work at it, and you got to find your own method. Some people right away in their bedroom or their hotel room and then bring that to the stage, like the Seinfelds of this world. There are some people who just ad-lib all the time, like Ross Noble, like ad-libs all the time and then keeps the stuff that's good. So he sort of writes on stage. You got to find the method that's good, that's right for you. But if you persist at it and look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm sticking with this for 10 years and then I'll judge whether I could make a success of this, then I know you can do it.
Yep.
Because most people don't do that. Most people live and die by the last gig they've just done. And that's not the way to do it. It's to look at the trend over the months and years, not the trend over the nights, the nights of a weekend run in Brisbane or something like that.
True. And I should add, this book is not targeted comedians, stand-up comedians. This book is targeting people in business who should be adding humour into their everyday work life, improving presentations, improving their potentially if they're keynote speakers.
I mean, it's the front quarter, the why you should use humour in business is pretty much just for business people. But the techniques in the back, are basically, my More Funny, More Money course that I told you about before costs $2,000 to buy. Yep. This book has everything that's in that course written down and crafted up so it works in a book, and you can buy it for $30 in the shops. So it's like pretty much everything I know and learnt over 10 years doing stand-up full-time in Australia, then the UK, all the stuff I used to use to generate material when I was a comedian, and even some stuff that other comedians gave me as tips. For example, a fantastic comic called Mike Wilmot from Canada said that an older guy gave him this tip when he was young. If you know that there's a part of your act that isn't quite singing like it should, he said, get down and write it out word for word with a pencil on a bit of paper or a pen on a bit of paper. Right. Because your brain works so much faster than your hand can to write things out. Yep. Your brain will zip off in all these other directions and bring you new angles. It's sort of like watching yourself on video or something like that. Your brain just races ahead of where your hand is up to, and you automatically generate new bits of peppering, like where you pepper a material with some more jokes. So there's like over 100 tips like that to generate new material and make it better and better and better once you've got it. So I would say I don't want to correct you when it's your podcast, mate, but I reckon stand-ups will get a lot out of this.
Oh, yeah, good. Very good. Yeah, you don't want to cut off one of your audience, of course. That's for sure. Understand 100%. Well, you are short for time, so I'm going to jump to my next set of questions, which is about the International Business Humour Summit. It's an online program. You're interviewing some of the most successful keynote speakers in the world.
Yeah,
Tell us about this.
I really missed. Now I'm a keynote speaker and an MC at conferences and things like that. I really missed the green room banter and the green room discussions that you have when you're a stand-up. I really missed, you go away with people for the weekend, you have breakfast together, and you talk about the business of comedy and you talk about the craft of what you do for 3 days with people who like and respect. And I really missed that. So I thought, right, I'm going to start interviewing people because, I've got this What I Wish I Knew book series out there that I've interviewed over 1,000 people for. So I know I'll just interview people. So I really enjoy the interview process. I really enjoy, as I'm sure you do with your podcast and everything. And so I just started contacting all the best and like asking all the speaker agents and everything, who are your top 3 funniest speakers from around the world? And so in this thing, we've got a guy called Darren LaCroix, who is a former world champion Toastmasters speaker. So he was in the year he won, he was judged the best Toastmasters speaker in the world. A guy called Tim Gard, who is the National Speakers Association in America. He's like a Hall of Fame speaker from there. I've got a lady called Karen Buxton, who's also a Hall of Fame speaker over in the US. And similar sort of things from the UK, one South African guy, and from Australia, a guy called Dan Gregory, who's the big guy off the Gruen transfer, who did stand up with me over in the UK, and he's really funny when he speaks. And Jeff Green, the stand-up comic, he does a fair bit of corporate stuff now, so I'm interviewing him.
He does, yeah.
And his advice was fantastic, and it would apply equally to stand-up. So this thing will be coming out in a couple of weeks. I don't know when this podcast will air, but so it'll come out, and all you got to do is sign up for it, put your email in, and then you can watch. So it's called a summit because you can watch day 1 live for free, and then it'll click over and you can watch day 2 for free, day 3 for free. And but if you pay just $47, you can have all these interviews forever. And so I was chatting with my wife the other day, and if you paid, if you had to pay to go and see all these speakers speak, you'd be paying over $500,000 to go and see these people speak live, and you see me interviewing them for free. So I couldn't. And the tips they give in this thing, it's just been astounding for my evolution, just interviewing these people. And I know I'm raving on a bit, but it's just been absolutely transformative for my speaking and MC work. Just chatting to these people just really opened my eyes to so much other stuff that I had never thought was there about, the business of using comedy in the professional speaking circuit, which, I would strongly encourage your audience to look into, even though when I was a full-time stand-up, I poo-pooed it in my head as well. But once you get into it, there are ways you can do it where it's just almost exactly the same setting as a stand-up, but you're doing it like an after-dinner thing at a conference instead of in a comedy club. And,
absolutely.
And it pays really well.
I've seen the numbers. Yeah, look, if someone as a comedian who's doing okay might be getting $500 here or $1,000 there. Ooh, but being an after-dinner keynote speaker, my goodness, it's 5 or sometimes 10, 15 times more than that. Yeah. Amazing.
It is. Yeah, that's a very, and you only need to get one of those every other month, and you've had a pretty good year.
I imagine, absolutely. So how do we get this access to these videos, these interviews at the International Business Humour Summit?
The info will be up on that. It'll be up on morefunnymoremoney.com as well.
Excellent.
I reckon internationalbusinesshumoursummit.com is too long. I have registered that, but I reckon that's probably too long. So I reckon if just people go to More Funny, More Money. We're doing this in the middle of May. It'll be up by the end of May on morefunnymoremoney.com. So if this airs after that, then it'll be there for you to have a look at.
Yep. No worries. Well, I think we'll probably get it out this week, this podcast. So look forward to it. Yeah. That's cool. Well, Marty, excellent. There is business in comedy. It's not just about your Friday night standing up on stage at an open mic and getting paid in beer. Actually, if you add humour to your work life, then there's a good chance that you'll get promoted, you'll get more money, you'll be seen as a greater leader, and of course you'll be able to make the right decisions because you'll be a more resilient person, you'll be a calmer person making decisions, and you may even be more creative in the process.
And don't negate the fact if you're listening to us and you are a stand-up comic, just one thing I really prided myself on when I was a stand-up comic, apart from, you know, trying to be really funny, is just to be user-friendly, to bookers, to clubs and things like that. And being able to keep your sense of humour when something goes totally pear-shaped backstage or, you know, you turn up and they've promoted the wrong night and that sort of thing, it pays off for you long term to keep your sense of humour. And they think, like, that guy is easy to work with. That girl is fun to work with. I'm going to book them again. Like, keeping your sense of humour when everybody else is getting stressed. And we all know those comics who seem really affable on stage but are absolute pricks on backstage. And we all know. And, you know, there's stuff going on, and that's fine. But don't be that person, and you will get more bookings. You will make more money.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, Marty, one of the new traditions that we have at the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast is the Pay It Forward Comedy Challenge, where a comedian prior to you has given you a word and you have to create a joke about that word. The previous interviewee, the comedian that we interviewed just before, gives you a word. The word that Paul Sharplin gave you is pedestal clock. Now, to be fair, I had to Google that. Did you have to Google? Okay, go ahead.
I didn't, because it works in really well, so I can tell a story about a friend of mine.
Yep.
This friend of mine is in one of those families where everything they do it because they've always done it that way. It's family tradition. You know, they have all this furniture that's been handed down from generations. They have a pedestal clock that sits on the top of their mantelpiece that's been handed down from one generation to the next. And every single Sunday afternoon, they have the tradition. This guy's name is Sean Richards. Every single Sunday afternoon, they have the traditional Richards family Sunday afternoon lamb roast. And, like, the whole generation goes. If all four generations go, like, they live in Sydney, everyone has to go. Like, blood or broken bones are the only way you can get out of it. Mm-hmm. And it's like the furniture, like everything handed down, this bloody pedestal clock that has pride of place on their mantelpiece. And so this has been going on every week. And Sean married a girl called Sophie. In Sophie's family, they had traditions too. And they actually had a grandfather clock that was passed down from generation to generation. And in Sophie's family, the firstborn male child in every generation was called Richard.
Wow.
Now, Sean Richards didn't want to be called Richard Richards. But he was so in love with his pedestal clock and his traditions and his Sunday lamb roast, he gave in. And little Richie Richards was born. Richie Richards. You know, it's quite a cool name when you're in primary school. You're like, hey, I'm Richie Richards. Look, oh, there goes Richie Richards. Yeah. Cool name when you're a little kid. First day of high school, Richie comes home in floods of tears to his mother. Oh, I can't go to high school, please, Mum and Dad. I always go back to middle school. And Sean and Sophie are, like, taken aback, going, oh, what is it, mate? Like, I know none of your friends went there. Like, I can't go to this school, please. And, like, look, I know, like, it's a much bigger school, like, different teacher every class. Like, I can't go to this school, please. Like, what is it, mate? What's happened? I said, they call me Double Dick.
Double Dick.
And he's still, like, he's 19 now, still like little Double Dick now, the poor kid. And so the thing I say is, like, you know, when you're naming your children, just think. You know, like, I don't know if any of your listeners listening to this are from Newcastle. I grew up in Newcastle, and our state member in my constituency for 32 years was the Right Honourable Richard Face.
Dick Face.
Yeah, Dick Face. So when you're naming your kids, just think.
Just think. Oh, dear me. Well, there you go. That's a good one. Fantastic.
Thank you, mate.
Now you get to pass on the pain. What word are you going to give to our next comedian?
Well, I want something that's, I was thinking, should I go for something really obscure and obnoxious like a pedestal clock? And I thought, no, something that's quite peaceful yet pretty hard to work in, and therefore pretty hard to work into a joke. So I'm going to pass on the word Zen.
Zen. Z-E-N. Nice one. Excellent. Well, good luck to that person. Well, I happen to know who that's going to be. That is going to be David Tolk, a Melbourne-based comedian. He's been in comedy for about 15 years. So good luck to David with the word Zen.
Awesome.
Well, Marty, thanks very much for your time and enjoy the beautiful weather.
Thank you, mate. It is glorious. I don't want to rub it in, but it is.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you.